Hey folks, Amanda here. Just a quick heads up that from time to time, the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast does include some adult language. So if you've got kids with you, you may just want to hold on to this episode to listen to a little later. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, your host for this show and the creator of the Surviving to Thriving movement. Each week, we'll dive into the mindsets that keep us in survival mode and learn how to get on the path to a truly thriving life. If you're looking for a wake-up call and want some valuable tools to get there, you have come to the right place. After all, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. Now, let's head over to the show.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. This is your host and founder of the Surviving to Thriving movement, Mark Jewell, and today we're bringing you an episode talking about some things here while this actually broadcasts live out here on the Facebook land, so hopefully we'll get some engagement, some interaction, maybe a couple of comments along with this. But today, guys, I want to talk about what happens. How do you respond? What's going on when you are not getting the results? Okay, what's happening for you when you are not getting the results that you desire? What's your response? How do things go down? What does that look like in your life? So for those of you tuning in live, we are actually putting together a live episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. Thanks for tuning in. You've got some questions, feel free to post them in. I'm going to watch over here on the phone, and we'll see how this goes. So for those of you listening in today or down the road, whenever you might listen to this over on the podcast, what is your response? How do you deal? What do you do when your results in life are not in line with the desired expectations that you have for yourself? You know, that's kind of a tough situation when you think about it. When what happens for a lot of us is we get caught up, we get stuck in this idea that things are supposed to or need to or have to turn out a certain way. And so what happens for us when those kind of things happen, when the results don't turn out quite the way that we'd like them to, is sometimes we get down on ourselves, right? We start beating ourselves up because things aren't turning out flawlessly. It's not turning out Pinterest perfect, if you will. I remember here just a while ago, it wasn't, about a few months ago, my daughter Nora had decided that she wanted poop emojis for her birthday cake, like little cupcakes, right? Cupcakes that were poop emojis, okay? And so that was her big thing over the winter months. So that's what she was looking for. And so what she did, what my wife did, is she went out on Pinterest like every good mom does these days, and she found the recipe and the how-to and all that for poop emojis. She found the pictures. So what, transparently speaking, and she's put this out on Facebook, so it's not like I'm throwing her under the bus or anything, and it turned out really good. These were the best damn cupcakes that we ever ate. I'm just kidding. Just being real honest with you. These are amazing cupcakes. But when we compared the picture of what Pinterest says they ought to look like and what they actually turned out looking like, there was a vast difference. And so they didn't look quite the same. So sometimes things don't turn out exactly as we want it to turn out. It doesn't look exactly the same, does it? And so that happens. So when your results don't match up with your desired expectations, how do we deal with that? What can we do about that? What's going on? So the other place it shows up sometimes is at work, right? So sometimes at work, things don't necessarily, you don't get the results that you were looking for. Maybe it's a sales number that you're looking for. Maybe you get rejected by a big client. Maybe things don't pan out exactly the way that you wanted them to for the company event. Maybe not as many people show up as you wanted to. Maybe the pipeline's running a little bit thin. Maybe the cash flow's running a little bit tight. These are things that happen in the business world. If you have not gotten smart to the ways to my suggestions of the world and deleted all the news apps off your phone and stopped tuning in to CNN, Fox News, CNBC, MSNBC, and all of those things. If you have not stopped paying attention to the news, then maybe the results in the world aren't matching up with what your expectations are. Okay, so what do we do with that? Okay, when the results aren't matching up with what we would like them to be, with what we would like to be able to experience. So let's just say you're in a leadership role in your organization, and somebody quits or somebody lets you down. Or I was just talking with somebody earlier today who had quite the experience with an entire team of employees that came after them. And so these kind of things sort of start to happen. Or somebody moves your cheese, right? Let's take a look at the way business and industry is structured today. Chances are, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, what we see out here today, the way that we're doing business today, the products that we're buying, everything is shifting and changing. The sand is literally moving beneath your feet right now in the marketplace. And the question is, are you open-minded to the fact that the results that you're going to need to create 5 years from today are not the same as the results that you have to create today in order to have success in the marketplace? All of this is shifting. Everything is moving right now as we speak. And so the question is, are you up to speed on what's going to happen? But let's just say one day you're not, or something shifts unexpectedly and you show up and all of a sudden the results start slipping away, or you get into a position where the results that you need to achieve in order to keep your business going, in order to keep your customers happy, in order to stay ahead of the curve in the marketplace, those things are shifting, right? So what do we do when those results aren't showing up? So the topic of the day, my friends, is what happens when the results don't match up with your desired expectations. So you have a goal, you have a desired picture, you have your Pinterest perfect way that things ought to look at the end of the day. And I don't care if we're talking about for you personally, with your family, with your business, in your body, in your church, community, contribution relationships, whatever part of life this happens. It happens, right? Things don't always show up looking exactly how we want them to look. And so, what do we do? Okay, so in the work that we do when we have our clients come to our live events, we talk about something called the story framework or the trigger and thought framework. And what it really shows us is that we all have our triggers, right? We have these things, and anytime a result doesn't show up looking exactly the way that you want it to, sometimes you get triggered, right? You get let down. You feel like you let somebody else down. Things didn't go exactly according to plan. And so you get triggered. That can cause a negative reaction. Okay. This is what happens anytime. I grew up in Minnesota. As a Minnesota sports fan, this is basically guaranteed to happen. Our desired result is going to let us down. We have the top record of NHL hockey teams when we can't even get through the first round of the flipping playoffs. Okay, so things like that, we consistently get let down, but the results don't always match up. So what happens, in athletics, we look at let's take a look at the baseball season that we're in right now. If your favorite team out there has a big win today, the chances that they win tomorrow infinitely higher. Okay, exponentially higher, in fact, because they have a feel-good effect. The fans have a feel-good energy effect onto the team, and those things work in tandem to create a greater likelihood that we'll win again tomorrow. And let's just say we go out and we get that result and we win. We have a happy trigger, right? And then we win again tomorrow and we win again the next day. So that's how winning streaks happen. Now, on the flip side, what could happen is, let's say we're in the middle of a winning streak, and all of a sudden, middle of the afternoon ball game, outdoor stadium, and a thunderstorm rolls in. We've got to shut the game down. Okay, maybe we get to pick it up later on that evening to finish it up. But what happens is, in the middle of all that, the routine of the team, the rhythm that was making them successful, gets thrown off. Right? And how many of us have this in our day-to-day, right? You're kicking ass at work, everything in life is just clicking along, boom, boom, boom. You're getting your workouts in, and you're eating healthy, you're taking time to make food for you and your family. All this good stuff is happening, and then you get a cold, right? You get the flu, and it takes you a few days to recover and get back into the swing of things. Except when you get back into the swing, when you get back to work, when you get back to life, when you get back to feeling good again, the routine is off, right? You lost it. So just like that baseball team is in the middle of the afternoon, okay, they get back out on finally get back out on the field, but the rhythm is off, and all of a sudden the pitcher not pitching quite as good. the catcher's not catching quite as crisp, right? The hitters aren't hitting quite as hard. Things happen, the routine is off, and next thing you know, we've got a losing score at the end of the day, and baseball teams are going to lose. We know that they're probably going to lose at least 60 games. The best teams are going to lose 60 to 70 games a year, right? So we should expect that it's going to happen. But what we look at is like what I'm talking about here is when that result doesn't match up with what we want, all of a sudden we start to get a little bit triggered and things don't go exactly the way that we want them to go, and we have a negative result. So what do we do? Like, what happens when that happens for you in life? A lot of us get stuck in these spirals, right? So if we were to look at if I evaluated myself and you evaluated yourself based on the political results that we have in America right now, the way that it looks, like most of us, a lot of people would just not want to have what we have for a government right now, because the results don't match up. If I looked at the results that are showing up in my life, like let's just say your relationship's not functioning super awesome at home right now. Maybe it could be better. Maybe your work is not showing up super great. It's not functioning at as high a level as you'd like it to be. So the results are not perfectly there. You've got a couple options. I mean, one of them is just to throw in the towel and say, screw it, I'm out of here. I quit. Right? We can do that with work. We can do that with relationships. You could move to Canada. You could go to Mexico, reverse migration. You got a lot of different options, right, for things that you could do if things aren't going the way that you want them to go. What happens for a lot of people is they actually get stuck. And this is when, you hear me talk about going from surviving to thriving. Like, my mission in life is to help people and organizations stop surviving and start thriving. So what causes survival behavior? And it's literally this. So the biggest part of it is when people get complacent. And where we get complacent is in most cases where our results don't match up with our expectations again and again and again and again. And again, and then finally, what happens is we give up, and you start to say, well, shit, I guess it is what it is. Like, that's just the way it is. Maybe that's as good as it is. Or maybe you have a story that says I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy enough, or I don't deserve to have more. I don't deserve to have better. And so that's kind of what ends up happening, is you kind of just accept that your results, like, that's as good as it's ever going to be. Let's take those of us that have maybe wish things were going better physically for us. Like, we wish that we were in better condition, right? We wish that we were in better shape. And so, I get into it for a couple of days or I start in for a week or so, and I don't necessarily see the results. Right? Or then it gets hard, because then I actually have to make sacrifice, or I go to that work event, that company event, and there's all this free beer and tons of great food and carb heavy stuff that just kind of keeps me content and keeps me feeling happy. So what do I do? I'm like, oh shit, this is free. Everybody's doing it. My diet can wait till tomorrow. And so what do? I go into another day and then that potentially triggers, like, that result for that day is either negative or null. And then I go into a whole nother realm, a whole nother sequence where that triggers, like, well, I got away with it yesterday. That'll be okay. So the thought is I'm fine. The feeling is like I got to fit in with everybody else. I'm going to have that again tomorrow. And so then I start eating poorly again, and it can go into a negative spiral. Quite frankly, on the flip side, okay, I can go to that same event. Okay, I can go to that same event. I can say, you know what? I'm strong. I'm not going to dive into it. I'm not going to drink all of the beer. Okay, maybe just one. I'm not going to eat all of the food. Leave some for somebody else. Okay, have a reasonable amount. And you take control, and you have a completely different result, which is I stayed on plan. I stayed within my calorie and my carb count. Okay, I didn't go overboard. I didn't go too crazy, and I feel better. Right? And so now I feel more in control. So those are the two different ways that exact same scenario can go down when it comes to reacting to a certain event. So what happened, like when we think about, why people get stuck in negative patterns in their body, it's because I I often make sacrifice in order to fit in with what is going on. Or I want to feel a certain way. And so my action is that I eat whatever it is that I want to eat, whether it's candy or food that just, that's not good for me because I want to feel a certain way. And so the question becomes, can you disrupt that pattern if you don't like your results? So if you're 100 pounds overweight, let me just take Nate, who's one of my coaching clients. All of his people go through our coaching programs. Nate came into our program 5 months ago, back in January, so almost 6 months ago now, and he came out of there wanting to lose 104 pounds. He had a lifetime of not being able to do it, and he finally said, you know what, screw it, I'm getting after it, I'm going to make the change, this is it, we're going to get after it, we're going to do it. So worked out twice a day, changed his eating habits, everything shifted around, and boom, guess what? In the course of a 3-month coaching program, he lost like 51 pounds. It was amazing. I mean, his results are phenomenal. He's continuing to do that. And in amidst that, the progress from January till now, there have been a couple of times where either I wasn't, busting his balls and holding him accountable and pushing him forward, or I think he tweaked his back one time, right, and he got hurt. And so what happens? Took a couple weeks off of coaching. Right, because the results were hurting. Took a couple weeks off of working out because the results were hurting. So these are the kind of things that happen. This is where when the results don't match up with our desired expectations, that result is in effect a trigger. Okay? That result is in effect a trigger. So when the trigger happens, you have a thought, and that thought is really based on a lifetime of hardwired programming in your brain. That thought is so fast, it's so immediate, it's like the crack of a whip, it's the shot of a pistol. And it happens so fast, and then you, based on that lifetime of programming, have a association with that thought. You have a feeling associated with that thought. Boom. Okay, and all of a sudden, bad day at work, I want to go home and I want to drink a beer. Okay. In my relationship, he said, she said, whatever. And so my first stop, instead of going to take care of myself or going to exercise or go to the gym or put myself in a better physical state, is I stop at the bar or I stop at the gas station and I pick up a 12-pack because that's easier than actually doing something that makes me really feel good, right? I'd rather sedate than go to work on myself or go to celebrate something else. And so that's a space when that happens. So when results don't show up the way we want them to show up, sometimes we get upset and we resort to something else. Sometimes it's not even food or alcohol. It's Netflix, right? A lot of people, rather than go to work on their relationship, or rather than go to work in their mind, or just put in some extra time after hours to make their work situation better during the day, they'd rather Netflix and chill with themselves, right? So just a thought, right? Sometimes we revert or we resort to ESPN, right? We'll go to dive deep into ESPN as opposed to working on my relationship at home, or working on my body if it needs to be whipped into better shape, or working on my relationship with God if that's the thing that you have, or taking some time out to meditate, because I can go in and I can live in the world of all the celebrities in the sports world and chill with them on ESPN, right? So for those of you that are watching live here on Facebook today, I want you to just go ahead and, within this topic, like, where is the number one place that you personally, right? Where's the number one place that you personally aren't getting the results that you want in life right now? You don't have to be descriptive, just kind of post them up and we'll have a little banter. We'll go through this a little bit back and forth. But somebody was just saying here, Maria Harvey actually is a former coaching client, and somebody who's kind of stuck with us over the years. So Maria says, no matter where you go, you ultimately have to do the work. There's no getting around it if you want to grow. So this is so key, right? Because if you think about it, like there's no getting around it. There are no shortcuts, right? So we live in this world where it's like, I just want to throw money at my problems, or I just want somebody else to take care of it for me. Or if it's a relationship thing, when I look at the other person, I say, well, they need to fucking change. Right? Like, that's the mindset that I get into, is like, they're the one who needs to change, not me, because I'm always right and there's nothing wrong with me. Right? And intuitively, like, that's wrong, but you still, like, when you get into the moment, you still think that that they should be the one who change. So one of the things that I love to consider is that life could be better or different if I just take a different angle, right? But the reality is, no matter what, I always get to come back and put in the time and put in the effort. If you go to the bookstore and you say, I've got this problem, I'm going to find a book, I'm going to look up a resource, or you get your audiobook or whatever the thing is that you have to help you through your whatever resource it is that you find for your problem. Do you get this? Like, most people who buy a resource will never actually read or fully digest that resource. Isn't that crazy? Most people will never actually get into the full utilization of the full resource, which is sad because there are so many cool things that people could do, that people could use, but they don't. So, how do we shift? How do we change? How could we potentially do something different, something better when I'm consistently not getting the results that I wish I could have, that I wish I had? So let me just say this: if the results that you're getting today aren't the ones that you want, it's time to take a good, honest, deep look at yourself and say, what is it that I get to do different? What is the work? What is the effort that I get to put in? Okay? What are the things that I get to do in order to have that greater, better, more awesome version of myself, whatever that kind of looks like? You know what I'm saying? What is it? Take a second to think about that to yourself. What does that look like for you? What could that be for you? How would that look for you? Another question that I would suggest you take a look at, take a deep little meditation on, is, who do I be when I'm getting the results that I want? See, here's where most people go off the rails, is they don't understand. They don't really even realize. They don't even really realize that they could have so much more, that they could do so much more if they just and that in some areas they're actually getting this. It's actually happening for them in their life. One of my coaches recently said to me, she said, one of the things when you describe what it is that you're trying to have, like, where else do you already have that in your life? Right? Like, who do you be when you're hanging out with your kids, or when it's just, when life is kind of fun and easy? And so I thought, well, gosh, one of the things that's easy for me to do, that's always fun, that I have no problem plugging into, is playing with my kids. Right? It's just hanging out with my kids and being with them. We go out and jump on the trampoline probably 4, 5, 6 nights a week for 20 minutes, and it's just fun. And I don't really think too much about it. We just dig into it and we have fun with it, right? And so that's a space where I have a lot of where it's easy for me to do that. A lot of times on date nights with Vanessa, it's easy for me to just dig in and have fun and really not care too much about what else is going on. When I'm on stage, when I'm whether it's recording podcasts or whether it's being at my events, it's easy. Like, nothing else enters my mind. I'm fully in flow, fully engaged with what's going on. And yet in other areas of my life, what I do is I try to manufacture happiness. I try to force it in other areas, because in my mind I've associated that with being hard, right? Yet I associate the exact same feeling that I get when I'm playing with kids, or when I'm with when I'm with Vanessa, or when I'm speaking, right? I get the exact same feeling that I'm after in this other area, but I make it hard in one, but it's easy in the other. And so the question became, how could I just allow it to be easy in the place where it's hard? What if I could have a better result? So the result that I wanted wasn't for life to be easier. That's not it. I just wanted it to be more fun. I wanted it to be more relaxed. I wanted to be able to be myself more in one area where I was, trying to manufacture it, and just like I was already doing it easily in some of these other areas. And the reality was, over here where I'm trying to manufacture it, I was doing nothing that was close to where I was just allowing myself to be having fun. So when I'm training, when I'm coaching, when I'm working with my clients, literally nothing else enters my mind. I'm just totally focused in that moment, right? I'm just having fun. I'm just playing with my audience. I'm just working and going deep and diving into some of the issues and the things that are going on. And so what happened is I just started in this other area of my life, these other areas of my life where I was making it hard. I just said, well, what if I could just allow myself to be in that same type of nature and that same type of focus over on that side. And guess what happened? When I started allowing that to happen, I just allowed myself to be, it got so much easier. I stopped trying to manufacture. I stopped trying to do he said, she said bullshit, and literally just went into when I'm fully present for my audience. Now I can take that fully presentness that I do and be fully present with my spouse, or fully present with my kids, or with my employees, or with that sales client. I took prospecting as a thing. So I have my coaching clients blocked off of my calendar. I have my events blocked off of my calendar. But in prospecting in my business, sales for me is fun. I enjoy the heck out of it. But was it on my calendar? No, I wasn't actually blocking time in my day to make that happen. Isn't that interesting? Right? Totally like not doing the same things that allow me to create fun and flow in one area, and then expecting that to show up in the other area, but the results weren't there. So as I try to bring this thing in for a landing here today, my friends, what was happening for me, okay, is I was not getting the results in certain areas of my life. Most of it was around sales and prospecting and that kind of thing. And what was happening is I was trying to manufacture a certain way to get it done, to allow it to happen in the way that I perceived that it should. And at the end of the day, the reality was my results was not lining up with my expectation. Okay? And we all have this. We all have these results that are not lining up with our expectations. And in most cases, what we're trying to do is we're trying to manufacture a certain type of outcome. We're trying to do it probably harder. My dad used to tell me, work smarter, not harder. Right? So we're probably doing it a lot harder than we have to, or than we could in certain areas. So the recommendation to you is to look at what are some of these other areas of life where you already have the kind of results, where you're already getting the desired results frequently. Okay? Where are you getting the results that you have frequently? Compare that with some of the areas where you're not, and then ask yourself, how could I allow more of this to happen over here? Right? Because you're going to have triggers. The triggers are going to come. Okay? The things that throw you off are going to happen. The bad news happens, the client leaves, the relationship goes stale or goes sour, or she says something that pisses you off, or he says something that pisses you off. These things are going to happen, okay? The boss is going to do things that upset you. These things are going to happen. It is what it is, okay? Just accept that that's going to happen. The question is, what is your feeling? What is your thought? And what is your action that comes on the backside of that trigger? And if you don't like the results, then we get to start taking a different action. And that action may be as simple as, okay, resetting the context around whatever it is that you're doing. That action may be as simple as trying something new. Okay? That action may be as simple as just creating some space to sit back and think about a different way to do it. Okay? It doesn't have to be hard, but can you find a better way, a different way to go about getting it to create that a better result? Okay? So when the results aren't showing up the way that we want them to, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to get down on ourselves. Maybe it means that we get to take a step back and reflect on the moment for a second, find out where are we already getting the kind of results that we'd like to have. Okay, and then can I just carbon copy that process, or the way that I go about that process, over into some of these other areas of life? And I found for myself that works. It works magnificently, and it's one of the easiest ways to go about doing it. So, my friends, everything else is just surviving. It's your time to thrive today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. You can find the show notes and links to all the resources mentioned in this episode by heading over to markjewelltraining.com/podcast. And if you feel so inclined, we'd love it if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. That's what helps us move up in the charts so that more people can find us and start their surviving to thriving journey. See you next week.